Hello, everyone. The webinar will start in 4 minutes, but you're welcome a little early here. You can write in the chat where you're from, and that's always a little bit fun to see where people are joining from. And thanks for joining this very late episode of our webinars. Normally we run them 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, European Central Time. It's 8 o'clock European Central Time now. And that is so that all of you guys on the US West Coast has a chance to participate without getting up too early in the morning. So maybe that's some of you out there. We'll see in the chats. And the first two who took the word are from Europe. One of them is Silas, and a special greeting going out to you, Silas. We know each other. And I don't know if you know, but I have one of our common buddies sitting next to me, Christopher. So we actually two guys here. Good to see you. Yeah, Christopher writes to you in Danish. And we have one from San Diego, California. That's a lovely place. San Diego. I have some good memories from an Airbnb place there. I went to the zoo also, and Mount Helix. Yes. Do you know Mount Helix, Nick? Or am I totally wrong? There's like a theater on top of this little hill. Yeah, very good. So I did some yoga videos with my wife up there, and it turned out to be very popular because the scenery was really cool. I had a very long focal length on the camera move, so you saw the mountains in the haze in the background, and then she had the theater for herself. Obviously, it was just any afternoon with sunshine, and then I recorded videos with her doing some yoga moves. Great hiking. Why would I know? I went there in a car, so I don't know, but that's the American way. Actually, I remember once yeah, in a car, Eric. You don't walk up there.
We have a mountain near here that you can drive up to, Mount Washington.
Uh-huh.
Yes, we have several of them. There's Pikes Peak in Colorado.
But that
those are real mountains.
To go to, yeah, we'll go there once. Actually, last time I was in your region, we never managed to do a hike together, but maybe next time, if ever that's going to happen, we'll see. One of the first times, or it was the first time I was in the United States, I was in Los Angeles, and some kind soul around Santa Monica answered to us the question, so which way is Beverly Hills? We wanted to see. I was like 20 years young back then. And she said, yeah, it's 5-10 minutes in that direction. And then we started walking. And we just didn't realize that in the United States, all distances are measured in, driven miles by a car. And we come from Denmark. You walk around, on your feet, and definitely we had no car. So, that we went for a very long walk and ended up taking a public bus, and it worked. So we got to see the stuff that we needed to. Yeah, those backpacking days, right? But welcome everyone. Still, you have a chance to write where you're from. We see some people from the West Coast. Thank you for joining us. I don't know where Wisconsin is. It's just north of Madison. Oh, I'm sorry, David. Eric, can you help me out here?
I don't know where it is either. I'm an American.
Oh, no. Oh.
It's in the middle.
How are you gonna manage your territory for Skaarhoj, Eric?
If he wants to buy one, I'll sell it.
Yeah, okay. But you won't bring it to the store, I guess.
Wisconsin is well known for cheese and Green Bay Packers.
I see.
We also have a great reseller there. So.
Good. Yeah. It's around 8 o'clock, and it's been a long day, as you might have heard from us in this chatter before we went. We were up really early this morning. So it's the third time we do this. The first one was 12 hours ago, and that means we have had a very long day at the office. But it's fun, and we are looking so much forward to sharing this time with you. So this morning I went out of my house, of course, and I think these last 2 months has been frustrating for so many of us. It's like the world is in gray, right? And it felt like this morning it was the same. So I came out of my house and I heard a noise which was kind of familiar, but then you know, also a little different from what it usually was. And then I looked up and I saw this. So exhibit A, you know, look closely. So what do you see right there? And immediately I was like, ah. And then I realized this was actually EasyJet taking off from Copenhagen Airport. And somehow I felt relieved because this is like the world as it used to be. So without getting into a climate debate with you guys, it just reminded me of how much I'm missing meeting you in the real world. And of course, that was, in a sense, a very nice way into the day. And obviously, I should remove the vintage UFO filter from my iPhone next time I make a photograph out my window. But it worked as a way to kind of prep myself to what we're doing here, because we are meeting in virtual spaces, because the reality still looks pretty much like this. We need to do remote production with masks if we are allowed to go to those sites. But the question is, what if you could wear a different mask than that kind of mask? What if it could be possible to run your remote production from a different location, maybe in a more relaxed setting, I would just say. So that's kind of a theme that has been going through the webinars we have been doing from Skaarhoj for the last 2 months. And also, in particular, what we're addressing today. So we have guest stars from Intinor today, where we'll be looking at these things. But they all fit into a series where we've been looking at how we do remote productions as smaller teams. We have been looking at how Skaarhoj hardware enables you to bring in a smaller team to manage cameras and vision mixers, but still retain a high production quality. And that's done by integrating multiple functions in these so that they get really easy to use. And it's also easy to hand out control to other people without a lot of instructions, because you can program these or configure these devices to do very specific things in the right order and so on, so that there's a chance of less errors in your production. So that's very useful and has been a theme across all the webinars that we have been hosting on how you can achieve this with our hardware. So for those of you who may be new to Skaarhoj Universe, we have many different control products. It's all hardware. We have PDC controllers, vision mixing controllers. We have RCPs for camera control. We have utility controllers like typically rack units to control routers and so forth, audio control surfaces, and also replay surfaces for that kind of universal broadcast control. And they can talk to so many different devices. So that's kind of Skaarhoj in a nutshell. And today, if we look at the two main things that we can see today, it is that, one, they are IP connected. This is not USB controllers. It is not serial controllers. It's IP. It has an Ethernet jack in the backside. It even has PoE, so it's a single cable solution, which makes it insanely easy and convenient to connect these units. And of course, now that we talk about remote production, these units are actually controlling stuff in Copenhagen and in Sweden over a VPN. But we'll look much more on that aspect during the webinar. And then the way we control and integrate stuff is by installing device cores on the devices. So for instance, this PDC Pro that we'll be looking at is currently connected to an ATEM switcher and also to, in fact, 3 cameras in Sweden. So multiple devices controlled from the same thing by installing the device cores that you need for a particular job. This is how Skaarhoj Universe works. And then we have guests today, and that's Intinor. So I have Daniel in the other end, and Daniel will introduce us to who Intinor are.
Hi, and thanks. Happy to be a part of this third and final webinar for the day. I'm Daniel, and I'm handling both marketing, and also I'm the regional sales manager for US here at Intinor. We are a Swedish-based company up north. We will actually show you a map so you can figure out where that is. But I was planning on showing you my screen here. So let's try that. There we go. And to tell you a little bit more about Intinor, we started in 2003 by Roland Axelsson, who is still the CEO and product manager of the company. It is a family-owned company. The Roland's brother Björn is actually the CTO, and a lot of the employees are part owners. Headquarters, development, production here in northern Sweden. We have a sales guy in Germany, and also we're working with direct sales here in the Nordics, but resellers all across Europe. And in the US, we have a distributor, that's JB&A, and in India, that's Rahul Commerce. Over 1,000 units shipped, and most of them are still in use. We actually had a 8-year celebratory cake here a couple of months ago. One unit had been online, up and running without any reboots for 8 years. So our goal is to deliver the best and most comprehensive solution for high quality live video over the internet. And when we talk about the internet, we always talk about the public internet. So no fixed fibers or satellites. Public internet that like we're using right now. So to achieve this, we have a product series that's called the DIREKT series. This is based on direct links, 1 to 8 channel encoder, direct receiver with 1 to 8 outputs, and the direct router that our resellers like to call the Swedish Army knife. A decoder, but with transcoding functionality and a lot more, which we will look into more later on. All of these products gives us a lot of different solutions. We have solutions for esports. If you've been watching esports, you've probably watched some Intinor encoded high-end esports. News, sports, contribution, distribution, and what we're going to talk about more today is remote production. This gives us, since we're active in a lot of different vertical markets, we have, this is some of the customers that we're working on with. As you can see, Blast Pro Series, DreamHack, ESL, a lot of esports, more traditional broadcast companies with ProSieben and BR, also MEP, Lajadar, and so on. And so yeah, a quick walkthrough on Intinor, and I think I'm gonna jump back to Kasper and talk and check out the panelists.
Thank you very much, Daniel. And yes, we have some panelists today. These are, apart from Daniel, from Skaarhoj, and I would like to start introducing Fatih to you. So Fatih, who are you? Where are you from?
Hello there, I am from Istanbul. My name is Fatih. I'm the guy for Africa and Asia. And greetings to the East Coast. Stay at home, stay safe.
Thank you. And from you, over to Olivier in Paris.
Hi, Olivier from Paris. I'm in charge of sales and marketing, and welcome to our webinar. And I will raise a poll in a few minutes time now, just to get your feeling and your vision about remote production. And this is really important for us to get your feedback about this market.
And Eric is the final panelist of tonight. Eric, who are you?
I'm Eric from US Broadcast. We are the manufacturer's rep for Skaarhoj here in North America, and we're basically charged with making sure that everything Skaarhoj is handled well here. If you have any pre-sales questions, post-sales questions, tech support, building up the reseller channel. So if you're a reseller, you can also reach out to me, and I'll drop my email into chat here.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Eric. And we'll go back to Olivier now. We have a little poll to share with you.
Yeah, this poll, you have the all the time you want to answer, because we will close it at the end of the webinar today. First question, we wanted to get your vision and your status right now regarding remote production. Do you often use this kind of producing content? Second question was more an open question to see if you can evaluate the cost saving that can represent remote production. We give you three figures: 0 to 15%, 15 to 35, and more than 35%. Next question is a key one. What are the main issues that you face or that you think you may face during a remote production? Take your time to answer this one, because this is really important for us to have this vision about what could be the issues you could face. Where does this type of production will be mostly used? Is the next question, number 4. There are several kind of area where it can fit, and just to see with you where you think it will be the best thing. Last question, which functions are essential for you to do remote production easily? What do you think you need to, and we need to focus on? So take your time. You can answer until the end of the webinar. And let's start now with I guess, Kasper, who will introduce what has been prepared for you today.
That is correct. Thank you, Olivier. And remember, you have a lot of time, like 30 minutes until we close down the poll. So lots of time to answer, and we'll share the results with you at the end. So what we'll do next is to look at the setup of today, and we'll be focusing in on Denmark and Sweden, because we do remote production between these two locations. And if you're not familiar with that area of the globe, then it's marked with the red square on the previous slide. And on this one, you see the locations that we are working from. So Copenhagen down here, this is where I am. And up here we have Umeå, from where Daniel is sitting, and down here Stockholm. And Daniel would like to tell us a little bit about the hardware we find at these locations.
Yeah, so in Sweden, both in Umeå and in Stockholm, we have our encoders sending the video streams. Here in Umeå, we have 2 PT-Z optics cameras with tally lights. We also have a camera up here, which shows the a background camera to show you how it actually looks around here. And then in Stockholm, at a partner company called LonLink, we have another new tech camera. All of these connected through VPN and connected to Copenhagen, where Kasper has a direct router.
That's true. And let's take a look at that direct router. In a moment, I'll also show you a little bit how we can actually produce things and how these units work. But first, on my camera feed, you'll see a picture of our server room. So out here in the server room at Skaarhoj, we have a direct router. And I'll just recall a preset on my robotic camera here, so you can see it. It's right there on the floor. So it's looking like a tower PC. Daniel will be able to explain everything that's inside this box. But this is what receives all the video feeds coming down from Sweden to Denmark from the PTZ cameras up there. I also quickly want to introduce you to those feeds. So actually, Daniel's camera is also routed down here. It's going into his Zoom as a web camera, and the audio you hear is Zoom audio. And that's for all of us to be able to talk together fluently. We decided to use Zoom for that. It also means that the video that I get, if I switch that in as Daniel is speaking, you'll see a picture coming through my web camera into my PC with a latency from Sweden, and that would generate out of sync audio. So we generally don't do that. You'll see Daniel's picture from his web camera as he does his presentations. But let's look at the feeds we have up there. This feed is from the room where Daniel is sitting, and I just switched it in. So this is live video from Sweden coming to Denmark into the switcher we have down here. This is another camera in Sweden. And then we have the camera behind Daniel. By the way, here you see the tally lamps located at each camera will indicate to Daniel which one is being broadcasted. And we'll get back to that. This is the camera from Stockholm. So if we look at the map here, Stockholm here, one camera, 3 cameras up here. All 4 feeds are moved to Denmark with the encoders going to the router in Denmark that you saw on the floor in our server room just a moment ago. So that's the basic setup. And in Denmark, we put it all into an ATEM switcher, and that goes into my laptop and is broadcast to you, merging in my audio into that feed. And that's about it.
Yeah, and so, I can jump in a little bit with just the tower box that you saw, like you maybe saw on my slides. We usually do rack systems, but we also offer the tower setup. Esports customers of ours was asking for a more quiet system that he could have in his living room. So that's when we pretty much gave him a solution with a tower box with other fans and so on. So this usually is a rack, 1U or 2U, but can also come in a tower.
Yes, very good. So I think that's it for the presentation. You're welcome to ask questions in the Q&A and in the chat if you want to have some explanations to things. We have had a lot of questions during the day, but we'll go over this again. But first thing now is to have Intinor present the technology that is involved and how it works. So word over to you again, Daniel, on going through your presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll share my screen again, and we're gonna jump into the same presentation. When I need to try to move, I have a box here that is. Oh, sorry, it's kind of in the way, but I'll manage. We are talking about remote production, REMI, at-home production, whatever you want to call it. The basis of it is pretty easy. So we want to send one or multiple cameras from the remote location. We want to send those to your MCR or at home. You want to output that on SDI or NDI into your production system. Add graphics, add commentary, replays, whatever you want to do, and then broadcast that or input again for transcoding to different distributors or distribution to web TV or different takers. So this is the basis of it. But when we are starting to do it like this, we are starting to add more layers, and this is the setup that we have today. So like we mentioned, we actually have a third camera, so 2 PTZ cameras, 1 laptop and 1 regular camera. These are all inputted into the same 1U rack encoder. This has 4 SDI inputs and 4 software encoders. Our equipment, even though it's on hardware, it's software based, so it's software encoding. Like we had a look at, we have the tally lamps. We also have encoder in Stockholm, and there we have the NewTek PTZ camera connected there. At Skaarhoj, the picture shows a router rack, but that's the router tower connected to the ATEM mixer. Also, this unit is connected to the Skaarhoj controller, and we're both outputting and inputting the signal again, and connecting that to Zoom, and sending a feedback home here for recording. So we have, for remote production, we have a couple of what we feel is important features. So multi-channel encoding, decoding. You want to be able to send one box out in the field, and you want to be able to do a multi-cam production from there. So like I mentioned before, our encoders can do 1 up to 8 simultaneous video streams. So 8 SDI or NDI inputs and 8 software encoders in one box. And the same for the decoder. Built-in VPN to be able to control your PTZ tally and more. Remote control, our system for monitoring and troubleshooting called ISS also offers remote control. I can actually just jump over there real quick and show you that this is the system I'm talking about. We can see all the units that we have. I can also remotely control these units, go into the web interface and see inputs, outputs, and all the sources I have. Back to the presentation. Return video is of course important. Right now we're using Zoom as the return video, but we of course have other solutions for that as well. Intercom and IFB, we have a 4-wire system that can be connected to USB or Dante, and network bonding that we feel is one of the maybe most important parts of doing any type of transmission over public internet.
Yes,
yeah.
Daniel, if I remember correctly, on the previous slide there was a logo or word, 3 letters, BRT.
Oh yeah.
Would you care to explain what that is? It sits there in the middle and I don't understand what it is.
Exactly. So BRT is our own proprietary point-to-point transport protocol. So a transport protocol to send video over public internet. Bifrost stands for Bifrost comes from Norse mythology. That's the path between Earth and Asgard. So we felt that was, with our heritage from Sweden, we felt that was a fitting name for the protocol.
Bifrost is actually a bridge.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes the applicability, makes it a lot more. It's a rainbow bridge actually. So
exactly.
In your graphic, it should be all different colors.
Yeah, I tried to find them, but I only find the Marvel fancy looking images. So I need to work on that to get the rainbow just right.
Eric knows amazing things.
Yeah, he knows everything. Yeah.
My Google is very strong.
That's good.
So that's your secret.
Exactly.
Well, I watched the Marvel movies too. So
yeah. And yeah, a little bit more about Bifrost is that it has error correction, 2 types of error correction. So the standard forward error correction and also ARQ, and that is resending. So sending back packets that didn't arrive. Network bonding, Ethernet, 3G, 4G. We've also done some 5G testing here. Wi-Fi, KA-SAT, whatever you have, we can pretty much handle it. Adaptive bitrate and resolution, redundant audio. So if you have multiple network connections, you will send the audio over at least 2, so you don't get any audio interruptions. And also something we call cost management, which lets you prioritize your network connection. If you have a KA satellite, a SNG track that you want to have as a backup to your fixed internet, you can use that as the backup. we talk a lot about interoperability and having a lot of different protocols. We support a lot of them, and SRT is also a protocol that we support and that we feel is very good. Maybe not as good as BRT, but we'll let them work on that for a while. So both of them has forward error correction. They are using the standardized COP3. That's the same forward error correction you can find on RTP plus forward error correction if you've been using that. We have our own forward error correction that can handle more extra data and more packet loss in that sense. Both of us has ARQ. They are working on network bonding, but we've had that since day one. We don't have any encryption just yet, but we might work on that in the future. But one of the biggest benefits of having SRT is definitely the amount of companies that are supporting SRT. This is kind of obsolete because I guess right now there's somewhere around 150 or maybe 200 companies joined in the SRT Alliance. So more and more software, hardware, encoders, decoders are starting to promote and support SRT. Yeah.
Okay, Daniel, I know this is kind of the end of your slides, and before we move on to a Q&A session, is there anything else that you want to say?
Yeah, you started off your presentation with 100% IP, and that's why we like partnering up with Skaarhoj, because we're always talking about interoperability and we're always talking about an all IP workflow. So this graph kind of showcases the big picture of the direct router, or the Swedish Army knife. It gives you a sense of all the functionality that you could get. You can use encoders, of course, our encoders. We have built-in video mixers, we have API, we have the possibility to receive from other manufacturers. You can send directly from cameras. A lot of cameras are starting to support live streaming, but also stream directly from CDNs, pull HLS or RTMP or RTSP. We actually have RTMP receive that creates a RTMP URL in the web interface of our equipment. So you can give to your partner or anyone that are using an encoder that can do RTMP. You can give them that RTMP URL and stream key, and they can stream directly to you, and you can input that into your workflow. I'm not gonna go through it all. I think I'm gonna stay there, but please let me know if you have any questions about this. And this is always expanding. This is about a year old, so I actually see that we need to update with some other cool features as well.
And if anyone wants to make a quick screen grab of this slide, in case you want to study it for posting questions, then now is your time, because next up is going through some of the questions from the Q&A. And I think, Fatih, would you like to start out reading some of these?
Yes, to the Daniel, people are asking the price range. Would you like to answer now or maybe later with the emails and such?
Price range, yeah, that the encoder starts at 5,400 US, router about the same. But since our equipment is very flexible, the router comes with the IP inputs but no outputs as a standard. So everything is kind of built after the needs that you have and the project that you're planning to do. So if you're interested in pricing, please contact me, or well, I think that's easiest. Just contact me and I can send over some prices. Also, all of our contacts at JBNA has the full price list as well.
Okay, Olivier, you have a question, I guess.
Daniel?
Yeah.
One technical question regarding synchronization. How do you synchronize the remote camera, decoder, and switcher in Copenhagen?
Yeah, so that is actually the thing with using one encoder is that all of the streams get synced up very good. So since we're not using multiple different encoders, we don't use, or units, we don't use multiple different SDI clocks, and we're using the same network interface. So we've ran like 2 or 3 weeks long testing, and the only, even though we don't have a frame sync generator in the unit, it only glitches 1 or 2 frames in a total of 2 or 3 weeks. So it's kind of a good built system. So we get the sync as a bonus for that.
Nice. And next question is from Michael. He's asking the differences between BRT and SRT, and also asking, have you ever considered adding or moving to SRT?
I didn't really hear the last part of that.
Differences between BRT and SRT.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I showed on the slide, I can maybe jump back to that, and we can. So I'll jump back to that slide. So this page kind of gives you the difference between them. It's not, since both of us have forward error correction, both of us have ARQ. The main difference is maybe that we have network bonding, they don't. They have encryption, we don't. And then the biggest difference is that SRT is open source. Our protocol is proprietary, and only supported by BRT, right, or by Intinor right now. We're working on of course, adding more companies or maybe specifically more cloud services, which we can send directly with our protocol. But when having Intinor, you don't really have to choose because you can use both. And in some cases, it might be easier to use BRT because you have an Intinor encoder and decoder. But if you want to receive from somebody with a high vision encoder, or you want to receive from vMix or Wirecast, or whatever you want to receive from, we have different solutions for that. And since they are starting to adapt more into SRT, you can choose what fits the specific needs for that day.
So you have both, it's great.
Yeah.
Richard would like to know, are you also RIST compliant? If you're not familiar with RIST, it's like an SRT also ran.
Yeah, we've been looking into it, but haven't really pushed it through just yet. We haven't really had any client that's been screaming loud enough, so to say. But we're definitely looking at both RIST and 6E, of course. But no support just yet. But you never know.
The same guy would like to know, is there a way to keep 2 remote frames together if you, to one U units. If they bought 2 remote units and they're sending to 2, basically, if you send side by side 2 sets of units, will they be in sync with each other?
That's always harder because you will have different SDI clocks and you kind of need to start them at the same time. But we can, especially when doing low latency, because low latency will demand us to have very low buffer size. Otherwise, we can kind of arrange the sync where the changing buffers on the receiving side and get the streams in sync. So the answer is it's not as good, but it can be achieved.
The cards that you're using in these units, do they have a Genlock input on them?
Yeah, they do.
So it's potentially, at least the system's outputs could be synced to each other.
Yeah.
Even if the frames aren't arriving the same time, at least it's frame accurate.
Exactly.
Very good. Thank you. We have no more questions at this time, but we have another period at the end of the webinar where we'll do more Q&A with you guys. At this point in time, we'll just move forward and look at the Skaarhoj side of things in this setup. So we have a few units we already mentioned, and one of them, the cornerstone, is kind of the PTC Pro we have right here, which is one of our standard PTC controllers. It's in fact the one sort of in the middle, because we have one which is smaller, PTC Fly. We have a bigger one, PTC Extreme. They can all do the same. They could do the same today, but it's all a matter of how immediate access you have to things. If you have a PTC Pro, there's typically enough buttons to have direct access to preset recall, direct access to camera selection, direct access to selecting menu options up here. While if you had a PTC Fly, it has less buttons, less encoders, and it means you need to hide it inside shift levels, for instance, if you want to do that. Because one of the secrets, if we go back and think about what Skaarhoj is about, creating the easy user experience, maybe you want less functionality on your controller because your operators shouldn't be able to do as much as maybe a seasoned broadcast engineer would like to do. So that's how you approach our products. You think about the use cases, kind of form factor you need, the operators you're aiming it at, and this is how you set things up. So on this PTC Pro, we are almost running a default configuration. In fact, that's how life usually starts out with Skaarhoj devices. You load a default configuration, in this case, probably a PTC optics configuration to control the PTC optics cameras, and then you add on top of that. And one of the things I want to show you is a very clever little feature, which if we look at the MiniFly here, and I need maybe to first introduce the MiniFly to you. This is my control panel for this webinar. I have had it with me since the very first episode we had, and it has been developed over time. In fact, I would say we are taking our own medicine, because using this controller each time, I have tweaked and fine-tuned this to become an even better panel for the kind of psychological stress associated with sitting here in front of the camera and still being responsible for switching sources by pressing these buttons. So, for instance, when I switch to this one, if I want myself picture-in-picture like this one, and I want to go back to me in full screen, hey, it also disables the picture-in-picture. I programmed that into that button, and that's a program. Be careful with that word. It's like configuration. You have drop-down boxes in a web interface, so it's very easy to select actions. But basically, this button does two things. It first disables the keyer in the switcher that brings the picture-in-picture up, and then it switches to camera number 1. Now, in this case, it is switching sources from Sweden. So as you saw previously, now I'm pressing button 3, 4, 5, and 6, and you won't see it because I'm changing away from this. So this is one of the cameras in Daniel's end. Daniel, will you wave to the camera? So we can see we have video from, yep, Sweden, Umeå, thank you. And there's another camera here. We can switch between these two cameras and Copenhagen, and there you see the cameras. Because of the latency, we can sometimes see the tally lamp light up, as you can see right there. And then this is the camera in Stockholm. Okay, now you know this. And then on the panel here, it's actually also connected to the same video switcher. Now notice the buttons. This is a camera selector, camera 2 and camera 3 over here. And back to camera 2, for instance. Okay, so let's take camera 2 as an example. Now I'm changing over, that's actually on 3 here. Then I will give you picture in picture, sorry. Wait a second. No. I need this one. Okay, this is good enough. I was just confused. Now notice the button I'm pointing to with my finger. It is lit up in red because it is actually on program. And I want the PDC operator to know that this is the camera which is live. So when he's using the joystick here, he knows that he's operating a live camera. So now we'll be zooming into Daniel, okay? And I'm doing that on a live camera, I can see that, but if I change over here, now this is still dimmed red. I don't know if you can see it on this tiny picture, but it is actually, it has a red tone to it. So I still know that the unselected camera is on program. And now I can, obviously, if I operate that camera, you won't see it. But if I go back here again, you can see this is now red. So that's one very important thing, that this PDC Pro is in fact connected to the ATEM switcher and using that connection to paint the keys with tally information so the operator knows what is on program and preview and can use that to judge whether it's a good idea to move the camera or not. Just quickly on this one, because it is a pretty nice feature. I don't know if Christopher, can you bring up the camera from the server room? I just want to show this because it's really cool. These two buttons up here in the top, they are four-way buttons. And notice what happens if I press the lower edge of this button. I'm actually zooming away. And if I press the upper edge of the button, I'm zooming in again. Now there's a button just next to this one. I can press the right side and it will actually pan to left and right. I can press the upper side and the bottom side and it's gonna pan. And here is my speed control, because obviously these are binary choices. If I hold down the key on the bottom edge, then right now nothing happens because my speed control is all the way in the bottom. If I turn it up, then you can see that it's actually, yes, it is moving, right? So I can do it really quickly with this speed control. Now, and then I have a shift key, by the way, and with this shift key, I have access to preset recall. So now we can just recall the preset there. You see, this is actually what you can build into a little controller like this one, controlling a switcher, and then in this case, a Panasonic camera. Here we are controlling PDC Optics cameras and NewTek cameras and the switcher as well. Actually, the same switcher. So that's very, very powerful, and how Skaarhoj units can be super useful. And I'm so thankful that it actually turned out to be possible to use this at the Zoom webinars, because it helps me so much to manage the whole production, which is a part of what it is to be host on these shows. Let's go back to the PDC Pro and look at what else is in this unit. So just stand up how PDC Pros work. On this button here, we have different exposure related settings. If I go in here, then I'm now in manual mode and I can adjust iris, shutter speed, and so forth. And this is, of course, happening on one of the cameras in Sweden. It should be this one. So we can see that as I'm changing the iris value here, I'm also adjusting the exposure of Daniel's picture. And I'll just go back to auto again. If I go to white balance mode, we can see this is indoor white balance. We have outdoor white balance now, and so forth. We can also go over here to manual white balance, and then we can totally mess up the picture by turning this knob, or we can just hold it down and change these values. And now back to auto again. We have settings for color, for image, and menu, on-screen menu display, image flip, reverse, power on off, and so forth. Speed control, focus, auto, manual, focus zone, and this is a little focus knob over here. These buttons on this side are preset recall. So notice what happens when I press this one. Then we have recalling preset of Daniel here. We have a little closer shot if I press this button, and I'm not sure if I put anything into this one. Yes, I did. That was one of the robotic cameras facing the other way. I'm sorry on behalf of PDC Optics that this is a very blurry picture. I think the autofocus, I was too lazy to manually pull it. Hey, why not? Why not try? Okay, so we go to that camera. We have manual mode, and now hopefully I'm able to adjust the focus here. Yeah. So latency is going to be a little bit of a bitch here, but I'm going to go back to order. But you can see that this is going to help you to pull focus. And if you want to adjust the speed, you have speed for focus pulling right there. And now back to the wide shot with this one. Obviously, I have joystick control as well, so I can do zoom from this camera with the joystick and so forth. Okay, absolutely the same happens if I choose this camera. And then this camera is the one that we see in Stockholm. So if I go to this one, you can see that I'm now operating the camera by zooming into the switcher and tilting a little bit down on it. And I also have presets I can recall on this one. So for instance, this one will recall a preset. So that's all the same over again. And I think you get the point. If you recall the map, we had cameras in Umeå, north of Stockholm, one in Stockholm. And to me, it is all available on one big subnet. So these things are connected over IP by having IP addresses, which to this unit just looks like they would be sitting next door. So that's how easy it was for Skaarhoj units to integrate itself into this distributed production setup that we have brought to you today. There's one box left, which is the tally box at Daniel's place. So think about it. While the PDC Pro is connected to the cameras up there, his tally box is in fact connected to the ATEM switch in Copenhagen and pulling information from that switcher to light up the lamps that you saw in his end. So if you see this picture, you saw the tally lamps were just lighting up red here, and I can go back, you can see it again. This is happening by the tally box in Daniel's end, and that tally box looks like this one, which is fitted with RJ45 plugs here, and it's just using simple Cat5 cabling to connect the lamps. You can either do it like this in a star formation, where if I connect this one, then I would have tally for camera number 1. I have another lamp here. I plug it in here. This is for number 2. Of course, you can configure which cameras are associated with each of these jacks, or you can choose to daisy chain it. So this is the configuration that Daniel should have chosen, because if we go to Daniel's end, I think he has a mess of cables on his table. Is that not true, Daniel? Are you guilty?
Yeah, I'm totally guilty of that. And that's why I have a nice looking blanket over here. So yeah, you're not going to see anything.
Very good, because Daniel chose the star formation, but he could have, of course, connected the lamps by daisy chaining. Anyway, you can do it either way you want, but this is a super easy box to connect. And it works with all kinds of binary outputs. So it doesn't only relate to ATEM switches. It can be used with vMix and TriCasters, Panasonic switches lately, Livestream Studio, video routers. Really anything that has a state on off can be assigned to the red and green LEDs on it. Daniel, one thing we haven't discussed in previous webinars is that our tally box is in fact involved with your technology in cases where you use the raw panel protocols to talk with them. Is that not true?
That is correct. I haven't been involved in the projects myself, but we have them at a couple of customers, and we also are using it ourselves to control what we call a net destroyer to showcase packet loss and network latency and so on public internet connections. And so we've made a Skaarhoj raw panel into a net destroyer.
Those of you who doesn't know what raw panel is, it just means that Skaarhoj box is being dumb. You talk to it from a server solution like Intinor's technology. You ask it to turn the light on red and then ask it to shut it off again. In the case that we are currently having, the box itself is intelligent. So it's actually connected to the ATEM switch and pulling the information over. So that's basically a question of where is the logic implemented in the tally box or not, and it can be both. And this is what Daniel was referring to with raw panel being a way to work with the tally box, which totally depends on the server side, if you will, which is sending commands over. So that was an introduction to Skaarhoj technology. One thing that I didn't mention, and which is a huge value add when you look at our products, is how we add features like PDC trace and cruise control, for instance, for PDC cameras, which will allow you to have more dynamic productions. And cruise control is like when you enable it in your car and it just keep going by itself. You can do the same for PDC cameras. So like make a slow creep zoom, then enable cruise control, and it's gonna, you know, just go hands-free. And now you can change to a different camera, record a preset, and then switch to that camera, while the first camera was still doing the creep zoom or the slow pan, and that will help you to do more dynamic remote productions with less people in these times where we have smaller crews. And PDC trace is kind of the same thing. It's also automatic. So there you do recorded tours with your camera. Basically, based on a preset, you can now move the camera while you are recording the moves, and then you can play them back afterwards. Again, more dynamic productions. And that's some of the additional things that you'll see if you go back and watch webinar episodes back in time in our channel. You'll see much of this technology demonstrated for our controllers. But basically, you have seen IP connected stuff. You have seen integration of multiple devices in the PDC Pro, in the MiniFly, and also in the Tally-Box context. And that concludes the walkthrough of the Skaarhoj technology. So I think we are ready to first do a catch up on the poll, and then we'll come back to Q&A at the end of the webinar. But first, Olivier, would you mind to tell us how the poll went?
Yeah, so the result of the poll, we've got a really used and experienced audience today, because a large majority, around 60%, already use on a more or less regular basis some remote production, which is a good news and explains why you are here today. The question about the saving cost is always a tricky one. It happened that the most usual figure we can read about cost reduction is more than 35%. Of course, it's linked to the travel cost and so on, but especially in Europe, where we need to travel from one country to another to do remote production, we often reach more than 35% of cost saving by using remote production. What are the main issues? No surprise here at all. Latency and package loss are the key points you noticed. Where do you plan to use the remote production? And here it's strange, because the main market you see on the West Coast is the corporate market, while in Europe, it was the sport and the news who were before the corporate business. Last question, which functions are essential to do a remote production easily? Clearly, remote control and low latency. It's not a surprise neither, because we knew that it is the two of the main and crucial points to ensure a good quality to your production. So thanks a lot for taking part to this poll. I will send you back the results of the poll so that you can see how you feel compared to your to the other attendees. And thanks a lot.
Before we go to the Q&A, I just want to briefly talk about next week's topic. We are going to look at the ATEM Pro Mini. No, Mini Pro. And this morning, I only had a tracking number. This afternoon, I had a box, and now I have the ATEM Mini Pro, and I've even had a chance to play with it between the second and the third webinar. So I can promise you that I'm going to give you all the details you would like to know about this guy next Tuesday, including an example of how we can think about using this in remote production. So topic is going to be ATEM Mini to the moon and back. Love it or hate it, let's see. And with a subtitle, something like the world's longest Ethernet cable you ever imagined. So I'm going to go crazy on this little guy and explore how we can do remote production and also control this from a distance with Skaarhoj units. One of the special things that I think this one has is it has built-in streaming and recording capabilities, and it's still a switching surface, which is insanely popular. So I'm looking very much forward to working with it. But I already Wiresharked it a little bit, so I know we are gonna crack it. That's awesome. Now, we have Q&A left. That's what will take up the remaining 4 minutes of our webinar this evening. Thanks for hanging out with us for this long. But let's first see, we have at least one question in the poll. And Eric?
I definitely love it or hate it. No, I think I lost internet there for a second because you all dropped out. Apologies. Jody asks the latency point-to-point within a short distance. And I guess we'd need to ask her the question, what is a short distance?
And
so can you make some assumptions?
Well, let's say like looking at a map, going from Sweden to Denmark isn't that far of a distance, right? We can actually have a look at if I'll share my screen again. When using Bifrost, as this encoder is doing, we actually get a lot of information about the point-to-point solution that we have. Since the encoder and decoder is always talking to each other, we know that we can measure if we have any packet loss. We can measure the network latency. So this is one way. We can directly say that the network latency round trip time is only 10, or round trip time is then 20 milliseconds. So, and on IP3 here is a 4G router. So that has a little bit longer latency. But from our end right now, with the encoding that we're doing and the network latency, we would say that we are at 800 millisecond, 900 millisecond, somewhere around there as a lowest. But yeah, so from now on, or right now, our lowest latency is around 0.91 second. And we also have some cool features on how to prioritize them. We were talking about doing data cost, and this Ethernet number, IP number 3, is actually a SIM card set in a router. And I can pull this, and the system will prioritize how much data I'm pushing into it. Yeah, that was a little bit of a sidetrack of the question, but still.
Totally happy with that answer. So thank you very much, Daniel. And it also means we are hitting 9 o'clock very precisely. So thanks for hanging out with us this evening. This is the end of the webinar. We'll probably keep it open for another few minutes. So if there is just a few final questions, we'll do that. But before we wait for any last questions, I just want to thank you so much for coming to our third webinar, this special episode. Make sure you follow us in our newsletter, subscribe to our newsletter, or follow us on social media. This is the way to keep updated on what we do. And also know about the particularities of next week's topic. But thanks to every panelist and every participant or attendee out there. Thanks for joining us this evening. As I said, we'll hang out for a few more minutes and then we'll close the webinar for tonight. Yes, and thank you, Daniel, for staying up this late. It's also been a long evening or day for you, right? Yeah, but it's been good. I'm happy to stay up, and we're not getting any long days now when we don't get to go to Expo. So
I'm happy to get the expo experience from Umeå.
This is it compensating a little bit to be on webinars and so on?
Yeah, I would say that having webinars is at least getting us a little bit closer to our customers, and especially we're based up north in Sweden. We don't have any customers close by, so we need to have the webinars and we need the expos in regular times. But we'll have to deal with this.
Olivier, next week we should ask questions to our participants or the attendees whether they are going to go to a trade show ever again.
I think it's a really good question regarding the cost that we may support due to the cancellation of NAB and IBC and so on.
It's being really a lot uphill when this is possible to do again. So what do you think, Eric? What's your feeling about it?
Yeah.
Olivier, did you have a question?
No, go, Eric.
I mean, I'm hoping next year's trade show schedule is back to normal, but I think your attendance is going to be half of what it was. But in fairness, every time it seems like, look at ISE, for example, attendance was down 33%. Do you feel like you missed 33% of those people? I feel like when attendance drops, it's the people that probably shouldn't have been going anyway, the tire kickers, the looky-loos, the people that are just looking for booth swag. So if only 50,000 people show up to NAB, but they're the right 50,000 people, I'll still go. I mean, I'll still go anyway. I was thinking about going even though there wasn't a trade show. So I might just show up in Amsterdam in September.
Right. Yes, right on. We're going to do that. And yes, let's just book the suites in Las Vegas next year and then go to the shooting range, if for nothing else. Have fun for a week. So since we don't have any more questions, I think, do we have any more fun questions after Olivier?
No, I have one question for Daniel. Assuming you go to NAB or IBC next year, what product or which new feature do you plan to show to the potential attendees?
Yeah, we're this year at NAB, where we're planning to be a part of the New Tech NDI Pavilion. So I hope to be there next year as well, or next year. And I hope that we can have even better integration with New Tech and other production systems. I love to talk about interoperability and making life easier for the production crew. And I think that we can really help out with that. Low latency will be a new feature coming up in end of 2020, where we will have a sub 500 millisecond latency. I think that's the most exciting. Also bonding for receiving. Might do some new hardware, but I like the rack. Even though we've built new backpacks and so on, I always like the rack. They always work. So
they're going to release a new product called Ragnarok, which is going to be the post everything solution for live remote production.
Exactly.
You're so clever, Eric.
I'll just put some straps on a rack and then I'll call it a backpack and then we're good to go.
But Daniel, this reminds me, you have mentioned the backpack all day and I never asked you to explain what this product is.
Yeah. So the backpack is actually a collaboration between us and EasyRig, and also a company from Sweden that manufactures I would say like camera mounts, camera harness. So we're using their harness and we are attaching our mobile unit with built-in 4G modems on them. So we have that on the back and 4G antennas, so up to 8 SIM cards.
What's it called?
The Direct Link backpack. We don't have any fun name for it.
Oh,
but
I do. I think you should
You
call
do.
it the Backnarok.
The Backnarok. Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna start using that.
On a roll, Eric. Somebody got to let you out of that house.
Yeah.
Seriously.
All right. Enjoying being with you guys on the panel tonight, but I think this is the end of it. I promised to get home early today. That's already not possible. So, but I think I can just catch one episode on the couch with my wife and Netflix. So I'll go for that. So see you, everyone. And for those of you hanging out with us here still, there's quite a few yet. Thanks for joining our little talk show here in the late minutes and hours, and hope to see you next Tuesday at our webinar next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye.